One of the biggest complaints that students have is they can't find story ideas, but I am here to tell you that there are story ideas everywhere. We just have to know how to look for them. Stuff happens constantly. There's people doing things every minute of every day on our campus and beyond. The question is, how does it become a story? And it becomes a story by a reporter paying attention to it or being notified about it and really taking it beyond the superficial and saying to themselves, wow, this could be something that readers are really interested in. Let me see how I can make it something that would be compelling. Journalists have to find the angle that's going to appeal to their readers. And again, they need to ask this question of every single story they ever write or ever encounter. What do readers want to know? What would you like readers to know? If you can think like that, if you can see a situation unfolding and say, what would readers want to know about this? Chances are you're going to come up with some very good story ideas and you're going to see them everywhere. Now, you have to change your mind to start thinking about this. You have to start to look at the world differently. So a non-journalist, for example, would see Goldilocks and the Three Bears is going to be about a girl, some porridge, bears, and beds. Journalists, though, we are going to see this. We're going to see a bear terrorizes lost girl in an abandoned cottage. So again, you have to shift your mind to start looking at things in a way that makes them news. So from where do ideas come? It's a great question. They come from all over the place, but let's start first with breaking news. So things happen all around us, all around the world, all around our campus. Things are happening. In this case, this was a tornado. When something like this happens, a fire, a crime, a natural disaster, that's breaking news. That's news happening right in front of you with very little need to research it or investigation. It's just happening right now. And we go out and cover those things. That's a big part of what reporters do, is cover breaking news. Now, we also cover follow-up. So a story that would be a breaking news example was the Boston Marathon bombing that took place. However, the survivors of that bombing, how they recovered, those would be follow-up stories. Now, other stories are scheduled and predictable events, something like the election that's coming up. We know that we're going to be having primary elections coming up in a given year. We're going to have a general election in a given year. Every time something like that takes place, it is very well scheduled. It is long planned out. So we can start to think about how we're going to cover those stories. What are we going to do to make those stories interesting, even though they're things that happen all the time? What about where are they now? So think about things that happened in the past, people who were in the news or events that took place, and you want to see, hey, what's happening now? These are a great way to come up with story ideas that are what we call more evergreen. They're things that we can run at any time. So, think about a story that you may have run about, that you may have come across of someone who did something significant or was significant in a point in time, and maybe what they're up to today. Really, we get a lot of our stories just from talking to people, from being out in a community, walking, at your beat as a beat reporter, talking to people who are in your community, talking to officials, talking to leaders, just saying, hey, what's happening? What's new? What's going on in our community that people need to know about? And if you give people that opportunity to say, hey, I'm listening to you, and I want to report what you're talking about, if it's something that readers would find interesting, they're going to come up with quite a few story ideas for you. So, let's think about what our beats are going to be. I've listed here some that may seem more city-oriented, but, City Hall here might become the president's office, or the police precinct on your campus, covering a courthouse that would also deal with your campus, school districts, community centers, libraries, art galleries, all of these things all represent news opportunities. We can also look at localizing national stories. So, these two people couldn't be further really from our college campus, but that doesn't matter because we could localize a story that relates to when William and Kate got married, or when they had their first child, or when Princess Charlotte was born. All of those things could be localized. Maybe there's someone else who shares a birthday with Princess Charlotte, and we could write a story about what it's like to share a birthday with a princess, and ways in which they might be similar. I mean, that might be more of a fun, lighthearted story, but it's certainly something that could be interesting to readers. And we can also localize national stories that are far bigger. So you can take something like the federal budget, or what's going on in Syria, or in Palestine, in the West Bank of Israel, and you can start to look at stories that will be affecting local people here. So that's a great way to grab a story idea, is by localizing something national or international. Now, press releases are a way that we get a lot of story ideas. These are some press releases that came out of Ohio State this summer. The police chief retired. We had water quality issues. We had a couple instances where water quality was compromised in the city of Columbus. That certainly would be a great story to look at, of how Ohio State's doing research related to that. A contract allowing Ohio State to continue running huge national surveys, maybe a story that goes behind the scenes of that. These are great ways to pick up story ideas by looking at a press office in the area where you're covering.